Welcome to Small Town Times. We're going to have a bit of a discussion about North Bay City Council's recent experience about Integrity Commission reports, investigations. We have a couple guests of former councillors and Dave Mendicino, as well as Sheldon Forgette, that bring a unique perspective into this. And we have a local example, of course, where Deputy Mayor Maggie Horsfield put in a complaint about councillor Sara Inch. And then through the investigation, she was found to be harassing the deputy mayor. And she was sanctioned with, and eventually with 3 months loss of pay, right? So this was just recent. So we're going to get into this. And I'm going to throw it off to Sheldon right off the bat. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me here, Dave, and it's good to be between two Daves right now, and I hope to shed as much light as I possibly can on this matter while I'm here. Well, firstly, I'm a non-partisan actor. I don't support one person or the other. I support what's right at the end of the day. Back in my council term, we established a code of conduct, and it was meant to elevate the decorum level, but it was also meant to prevent things like fraud and it was meant for serious issues, issues that really affect the taxpayer at the end of the day. Based on what I see here, I think any senior attorney who looks at that acting commissioner's report would basically tear up that report, because the commissioner's report, in my view, violates the Charter of Rights and Freedoms for Councillor Sara Inch. And it also violates her oath of office, and former councillor Mendicino would know about the oath of office you take, and essentially you're there to work for the citizens of North Bay. And by ostracizing councillor Sara Inch, what they're doing is they're saying you're not allowed to do your job, and I think that's wrong.
Specifically, how do you feel that her charter rights were infringed?
Well, the charter, it protects your freedom of expression and your freedom of voice, right, to voice your opinions. And that's where I think it was violated. And when we established this code of conduct, there was conversation around the council table that basically we all spoke about it, saying it's not meant to be used to punish people for their political opinions. And if you look at the report, basically, Councillor Sara Inch is being punished for her political opinions.
It's an interesting situation. If you read the report, there's a number of conversations that led up to the decision by Maggie to file a complaint and have an inquiry. And so if we can break those down, because together, it was in the report, together they seem to create a bit of harassment as far as what Maggie was concerned. But the first one was actually very different than the other two things. And it actually started, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Sara had made a post on Facebook about an individual in the transgender sort of situation, a teacher down south in a school that was wearing prosthetic breasts and whatnot. It was a big deal, big talk. She had an opinion. She posted it. And I believe Maggie actually interjected and had told her that she shouldn't do that on her platform. What do you think of that?
It comes down to, you're a politician. You're entitled to your opinion, and your charter rights protect your ability to have an opinion. So I just think the acting commissioner didn't take that into account, and I don't think that the acting commissioner took into account that Councillor Inch is vice chair to Maggie Horsfield. So it's her job to help Maggie with the budget. It's her job to help Maggie with the different departments, and together they're supposed to divvy up the tasks, and work together to advance, dialogue for the citizens. So,
Dave, I'll ask you this question. Maggie, as deputy mayor, interjected and had her opinion about what Sara posted about the trans individual. And that's what started the initial sort of back and forth email between Maggie and Sara about the trans issue, and I won't go into a whole lot of detail there, but Sara basically said after more life experience, maybe you'll look at it differently. And that's the ageism sort of thing that was brought up there. Do you think it's the deputy mayor's position to interject on somebody's Facebook post?
Well, can I just back up a little bit from that?
Please do.
Okay, so the Municipal Act. So there's 1,000 pages in the Municipal Act. Anyone choosing to run for council and fortunate enough to get elected, doesn't matter what their background is, doesn't matter where they come from, that person has to adjust themselves within the confines of the Municipal Act. It's 1,000 pages long for a reason, and it's long and complex. One of the aspects is code of conduct. And the code of conduct has been revised a couple of times in the last few years, with the Integrity Commissioner coming into play, as we now know. And one of the purposes of the code of conduct was to deal specifically with harassment and bullying. It's right in there. When you get elected, one of the first things you do is you read that code of conduct. So everyone from day one, in my opinion, should be aware of what the code of conduct is and how it applies to them, and should govern themselves accordingly. When that stops happening, that's when things start falling off the rails. From what I can see, this is what happened here, and it kept on escalating. Where Councillor Inch kept on repeatedly with the same behavior, even though it was, indicated to her that that behavior was not welcome. Now, in this day and age, if you're sitting there as a councillor, you probably shouldn't have gone down that road in the first place, making some of those comments. But when you do, and you're told once, twice that it's not appreciated, you should stop.
And I think to fill in a little bit of the blanks here is that right at the election results, Mark King was pointed out as making reference to the youthfulness of the new candidates. And I actually wrote that it was misinterpreted, or it was unfairly twisted to make it out like that's what he was saying. Age-wise or not, they were novice. The top three councillors elected hadn't been in political office before. So I thought he had a fair comment in saying that, but it got twisted around that it was he was against youth and women, right?
But, it gets twisted around. But again, you're responsible for your words. And once you say the words, it's the way they're interpreted by the other 10 people around that table. And they're all not going to be interpreted the same. And that's okay. I mean, that's the way it should be. They're not going to be all... It's up to that individual to read the room, if you will, and determine how they're going to govern themselves. Mark apologized right off the hop, and he stopped. And
well, he apologized, but he didn't think he did what they said they did.
But he stopped the behavior.
Right. So that was the first indication that Maggie was sensitive to that. And it's actually in the report that she said that, Sara should have known that was a subject that was a sensitive subject.
And she is well within her rights to be sensitive to that.
Is she? Yeah.
Well, I think so. Each of those councillors would interpret that kind of thing in their own way. And that's how we should be governing ourselves, everyone around that table. Unfortunately, Councillor Inch did not do that. The behavior was repeated, and it, quite frankly, just looks like she's had a hard time adjusting to the concept of, the confines, if you will, of the Municipal Act.
Well, fair enough. I'm going to bring Sheldon into it because I know he was elected as a young man, 23 years old in 2014. And he went straight up to deputy mayor as well. So there's a lot of parallels here. And
Just a few.
And there was a lot of commentary about your lack of experience and age at the time. So tell us about what happened to you and what things were said when you were elected.
We are sensitive to certain things and to certain words, and there are people who are sensitive. And and not to take away from that sensitivity, but at the end of the day too, what I look at here is I look at a counselor who was just trying to do her job at the end of the day, and not only that, her opinions were also attacked. So if she was sitting at the council table and out of nowhere she just started speaking out against certain people and whatnot, I think that would be a form of violation of the code. But if she's talking about her political opinions, I don't think people should be punished for their political opinions. And there's a very fine line between a political opinion and hate speech. And you can look at countries going through massive difficulties, and you can get a pretty good idea of what hate speech is and what real harassment is. My view looking at it, it's basically it's an over-victimization of a situation. And at the end of the day, it costs the taxpayers over $36,000. That's the equivalent, of 10 households' property taxes for a year. And my fear and my concern is that everyone is sensitive. So the moment you say something that offends someone, the integrity commissioner is going to be abused in the process. And based on what I see here is the integrity commissioner was brought in and a punishment was given to Councillor Inch. How is this going to affect Councillor Inch and Deputy Mayor Horsfield's working relationship? They're supposed to be working together, and when I'm supposed to be working with someone, if that's viewed as harassment, how do I do my job right?
First part of the complaint about the email exchange between Sara and Maggie, and where Sara was indicating that perhaps you would think different if you had more life experience, and that was, but that was a one-on-one email exchange. Did you really think a one-on-one email exchange where there wasn't that much uncivil, like she wasn't saying, shut up, you're too young, you don't know what you're talking about. She said it in a way where she thought she was being...
it looks civil to me.
Yeah.
It looks civil.
Did you see that part of the report, Dave?
I saw, well, that was reported, right?
Yep.
The email exchange. And what's your question?
Well, it's an email exchange between two councillors, elected officials, and one feels that maybe you would have a different opinion if you had more age, more experience and life experience. That's a little bit different than saying something publicly. It's just two people talking, right?
It's two people talking until, again, the behavior is repeated and repeated, and the individual that filed the complaint, Councillor Horsfield, finally had enough of that kind of talk.
Yeah, obviously.
And when that happens, and there seems to be a lot of effort made behind the scenes to try and rectify it. Mayor Chirico, from what I can see, did his best to try and rectify it behind the scenes. It went too far as Councillor Horsfield was concerned. That's when the emails become public, because now you've got the integrity commissioner involved, and everything you said about that topic or whatever, you've got to produce to the integrity commissioner. That's when it becomes...
Yeah, well, I don't know if I understand what you're saying, and there was a sort of a couple things that added on. The February 25th email that was a lot more vague, but it was also very clear that she was talking. On the same day, she made another Facebook post, and I think that was the real meat of it right there.
So I just turned to allegation 2, which this is the allegation that made the deputy mayor launch the complaint, right? And it is that concern. They're trying to pick out a new CAO, and Councillor Inch's opinion is that each person chosen to help pick a new CAO has a bias, right? And is it factually wrong that someone's going through life changes?
There's probably no facts wrong, but the thing was that she was she was on the motion that created that committee. She had her chance, right? So to come up later and send an email and include all those people and sort of criticize that decision, that she actually had her name on the motion. I think that was tactically or strategically a poor decision.
She had her chance to make her point, and
maybe she's getting some bad advice.
Well, you know what? I think she is getting bad advice. It seems to me that she's been trying to address the learning curve, and she's been trying to adjust how she goes about things. But I do think she was getting the wrong advice in some aspects.
It may not even be advice too. It could be, she just, they're all brand new in their job. Well, not all of them, but half of the council's new in their job, and nothing prepares you to be a city councillor. You got to go through all sorts of situations to learn how to do the job properly and effectively. So, anyone could be trapped in those sorts of situations. And I mean, if you want to take a look at a situation I went through, I was sued by the North Bay Taxpayers Association for words I said, and I wasn't prepared to go through that situation whatsoever. But I had to go through it, and there's a lot of things in public office where you have to learn as you go, and you have to roll with the punches.
Yeah, I remember that.
But I came out okay the other end, and turns out when you say real facts, you can't be sued for saying real facts.
How much did that cost taxpayer?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question, and I'm so honest. The city's insurance did cover that situation, which I don't like the fact that it happened, but the city's insurance did cover that, and there was a deductible. I don't know the exact cost, but of course it's wasteful. It's wasteful in my opinion.
Again, I go back to there's 11 individuals around that table, and they all have a different level of sensitivity. I mean, the older ones, like if I was sitting around that table as an older counselor, maybe my sensitivity level is a little higher because just I'm older. And listen, when I first got elected, I got some of the things they were saying about Italians and how they better get the mob in from Pittsburgh to help them out and all that stuff. And it was just. But to me, it was normal course of business. I mean, I grew up. I mean, I was all, the Italians, we were called certain names. It was, the younger ones they have a different sensitivity level, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's incumbent on each one individual around that table to gauge that around the room and have respect for each one of those individuals. And it doesn't look like this happened in this case. You talked earlier about the integrity commissioner being used in the wrong way. I use the word weaponize. And, you look at a municipality like Elliott Lake, they spent over $350,000 last year because it just got silly. Individuals started weaponizing the process. This was not that. In my opinion, this was not that.
Well, when you brought up truthfulness and facts, I look at the Facebook post, and I kind of had a little bit of commentary sort of debate with Regine Venn. He writes a Substack.
Yes, yeah.
I might have his name wrong, but a West Nipissing guy, West Nipissing Substack, and he's doing a fairly decent job of trying to be journalistic about it, right? And he covered the West Nipissing's most recent Integrity Commission report, where one of the councillors signed a petition to reinstate the chair for the old folks home there, and the council had decided to take that chair off for whatever reason, but because he signed a petition that went against council's decision, and then he got punished for it. Right.
This is my fear, is the weaponization of this process in our municipality. And I don't think this process should be used for these minor comments. Like these are like an over dramatization and an over victimization of a process, I think. And I know you're not of the opinion, Dave, that it is, but I think it's weaponization of this process. And I mean, I've got dozens of complaints in my head. Should I launch them to the Integrity Commissioner? Should I force the Integrity Commissioner to spend taxpayer money to investigate every single complaint I have as an individual? No, I don't. Like if there's circumstances that warrant it, yes, but there's circumstances that don't. So there's 3 allegations, and all 3 of them are different in their own way, right? And you're gluing them all together to create a word called or to use a word called harassment. And at the end of the day, you got to work. You got to work together with people on council. Like if I was your vice chair, Dave, I'd be trying to help you. I'd be asking, okay, do you need help on this? So what are we working on? What's the current problem that we have to deal with? And I'd be trying to help you. And if that's viewed as harassment, you can't do your job properly. And by the sounds of it, Sara was just trying to do her job.
If you're an engaged counselor and you want to be involved in the budget process, you can be involved in the budget process. That's your right, and I've never really seen anybody shut out.
Great point. But that brings me to what I was going to say too. Her Facebook post was really the linchpin. And on the same day, February 25th, that she sent what she probably thought was a vague criticism of the makeup of the committee. She put a post up that said that left the impression that she was having a hard time getting information from the budget chief and staff. And she didn't quite say it explicitly that I'm being stonewalled or anything like that. But if a fair person that read it would come away with the impression that she was being frustrated and she had to ask repeatedly for stuff, and that she actually put in parentheses that she thought that Deputy Mayor Horsfield was taking direction possibly from the mayor. She was making an allegation with a little bit of vague thing there. And the investigator, when she looked at the emails that were provided by Maggie, it wasn't true. She was getting the answers every time she asked for them.
And this is exactly.
Yeah.
Where are the false allegations coming from? I'm being shut out. My questions aren't being answered. Well, yes, they are. Here they are right here. Mm-hmm. I mean, and for anybody to say that, bring the mayor into this conversation saying, well, maybe listen, the mayor, doesn't matter who he or she is, ran on a platform and got elected on that platform. The mayor is always heavily involved in the budget process, always, as he or she should be, because they are heavily involved in it with the deputy mayor.
They got their foot in every portfolio, so
as they should
be.
They're the mayor.
Yeah. So Sara had an opportunity when Mayor Chirico sent her the email saying, "I think you're offside here. You should apologize and withdraw those comments." Sara didn't believe that she had come a foul in the email and whatnot. She did. Horsfield said that Sara said she was sorry about the post. I'll take it down. And then that's when they didn't even know about the post. But I think one of those two things was the last straw. I know they said there was the email about the committee, but I think it was that Facebook post which wasn't a hanging offense, but it did leave an impression that wasn't accurate. What do you think about that?
She didn't mention anyone by name in her Facebook post. Anyone could be going through life changes. Being elected is going through a life change.
Yeah, the life changing thing was in the email.
Yeah, but in the Facebook comments, she didn't mention any name, and anyone could be going through life changes. And as far as her feeling like she's being shut out of the budget process, maybe she did feel like she was being shut out of the budget process. Maybe she felt like she should have been in the meetings with the CFO, with the deputy mayor, and the mayor while they're talking about the budget. While I ran the budget process, I always invited my vice chair to take part in those conversations, but based on what I'm hearing from Councillor Inch, she's not being invited to those conversations.
And she had to do a little bit more effort to get the information.
She had to make a Facebook post.
But she did ask, and she got answers from Maggie. So it wasn't like Maggie was holding stuff back from her and not answering her emails. So,
and in Maggie's defense too, I mean, taking on the budget is a very huge task on its own, and you're getting bombarded by all kinds of people, all kinds of messages all the time. So, it is a huge undertaking to take on. So
it was a unique situation too. Let's not forget that unnecessarily so, in my opinion, the CAO that was employed before the election, retired. Was retired early through he wasn't wanted throughout the campaign and whatnot. All the talk is that there's going to be a new CAO, and so the process delayed the budget discussions a little bit, because then they had to form a committee to pick a new CAO, right? So this was an unusual sort of situation and pressure. Add on top of, I'm not sure how relevant it is, but Maggie was pregnant, and that affects everybody's thoughts about how sensitive, like I would be a lot more sensitive with a politician knowing that they either are going through a life change, like Lana lost her grandchild.
Okay.
Like, so I would definitely not say things, be very careful about how I approach Lana, knowing that she was going through that. And I would also, even as a reporter, I'd be a lot more careful with my wording and how I would be critical about somebody who is pregnant. It's just, that's how I would feel.
And really, when it comes to, our comments made earlier about being very cognizant about what you say, that is one of your major responsibilities sitting around that table. It doesn't matter who you're talking to, because you're so in the spotlight, if you will. I mean, everything you say and do is viewed with under a microscope. And you mentioned earlier on about the emails between the two that were, kind of back and forth emails, private. If they're on city email, nothing is private, because they can be FOI, they can be. But
so you have to take them as public. Yeah.
But it's interesting that that's an interesting comment, because those two emails. But it was it was Sara, Councillor Inch, going on Facebook and saying things. And again, once you start getting into that public realm like that, and you're not dealing with it kind of behind the scenes, and hopefully
there's a learning curve to go.
You put the mayor and the two of them in a room and try and work it out. Again, it just got to a point where enough was enough.
What do you think about this so far?
My comments still, or my questions and comments still haven't changed, because you're taking away the public decorum or the public debate about an issue, right? And but at the end of the day, we still have to be able to have real conversations and hard conversations, and we are sensitive, and we are sensitive to our own life circumstances, but we still have to have those hard conversations without the fear that I'm going to cost the taxpayer, whatever it is, 30 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand in a commissioner report. So if councillors can't have difficult conversations, I just don't feel like they could do their job to the best of their abilities. We have to allow for that in our society, because otherwise you shut down open and free dialogue. That's my opinion.
Well, I always lean that way as far as free speech, or speech that isn't free, but sometimes it costs money.
Sometimes it costs money.
And I would want open dialogue, so I do lean that direction. But one of the reasons why I didn't run for council is because I know these rules for code of conduct, and I wouldn't be able to live within them and still feel like I was doing what I was best suited to do, which was question things and to put things into perspective. And it would be really hard for me to not second guess a decision after it was made, even, so that would be, I knew that going in. So that's why I didn't jump into that realm. One of the reasons.
I've never experienced, in my 15 years around that table, I've never experienced any situation where I couldn't ask any question I wanted to ask, whether it's in public or behind the scenes. I used to ask a ton of questions behind the scenes. That's where a councillor should be doing their homework, behind the scenes. So I never felt like I could not. If you're an engaged councillor, you should be able to ask you're asking any question you want. You're getting the answers. And if you don't like the answer you're getting, you ask it a question in a different way. You went through your own vetting process to decide if you were gonna run for council. Maybe everyone should be doing that, because the Municipal Act is not going to change. it's incumbent on the individual being elected to adjust themselves within the Municipal Act. It's the only way you're going to sit on that council and be effective, in my opinion.
Well, speaking of Integrity Commission reports, investigations, you have some experience. You're on council when there was a big one where it cost a lot of money and it didn't really do a whole lot. Do you think that was used in the fair process? It was citizens that were instituting that one.
So you're referring to Invest North Bay and the
Yes.
Judge Vallon report.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
So we should be clear that complaint was lodged against Invest North Bay, not the City of North Bay.
Right.
Okay. And that was not a code of conduct issue. That was a conflict of interest issue.
Different thing.
So Invest North Bay was formed when I got back onto council in 2018. Invest North Bay was already existed. The previous council had authorized it and established it as a private board. Mm-hmm. After I came to learn a lot of consultation, a lot of legal assistance to the private individual, the private business individuals that were sitting on that board. Their main request was we didn't want it to be an ABC. Mm-hmm. Right, whether you agree with that or not, that's the way it was established. So when there was a complaint filed against Invest North Bay, conflict of interest during the administering of the marketing contract.
Mm-hmm. And to be clear, you were elected in 2018, and when you got to Invest North Bay, they had already picked the contract.
The marketing contract had already been issued. And an individual in the public filed a complaint that there was a conflict of interest. Judge Vallon ruled that there was no conflict of interest. It should have ended right there, because that's what he was tasked to do. He was the acting integrity commissioner because our own, I can't remember why, couldn't do it. It should have ended there. But then he went in a whole different road and deemed it that
I think that was his first investigation too, eh?
Yeah, he deemed that it was a public board.
Yeah.
That had nothing to do with the original complaint. He should have ended it when he determined there was no conflict of interest. So instead of this was the first thing that got to me when I first realized this, sitting on council, which should have been maybe a $10,000 or $15,000 bill from the integrity commissioner, and it turned out to be $55,000.
You know, she felt it was important that it was affecting her health because it was additional stress that wasn't wanted, right? It could have been handled differently without an integrity commission investigation, 100%.
And you know, the role of the integrity commissioner and that whole process under code of conduct, it does serve a valuable purpose within the municipal world. Mm-hmm. Within the municipal world, it does. It's unfortunate that it does get weaponized from time to time. Again, in my opinion, in the Horsfield Inch situation, it was not weaponized. You get into the other one that you referred to with the Invest North Bay and Judge Vallon. I mean, that whole process, it ended up getting to a point where the individual just didn't want to let it go. And when he found an in, as far as it's not a local, it's a local board. Why aren't they, being a public with all? It wasn't a local board, mm-hmm. But because Judge Vallon said it was, it started bringing undue attention and negative attention and really not really warranted towards the private individuals on that board, because all those, the way social media was on it, and it just got really out of hand. Mentioning the integrity commissioner and qualifications, if you think about what they're doing, they have to interpret legal documents. These are well-established, lots of experience, legal individuals, lawyers that end up being integrity commissioners.
But to that point, she wasn't. The one that did this report is not a long experienced lawyer. The integrity commissioner that North Bay hired has twice now had to get others to do the work that he was chosen to do. Right.
But they've still got a legal. They've got a legal background.
Well, I'll borrow I'll borrow from Sheldon's resume. Just because you attend college or university doesn't mean you're studying.
So again,
No.
again, if you
Is that a little cheap?
No. We could talk about that, but
so now if you feel that, can we get back to the Invest North Bay thing for 1 second? Because when Valen went down that road about it not being a local board and the pressure that it brought to the individuals on Invest North Bay and the discussion about what can we do about this, because now it's affecting our families and all this stuff. I went to the Integrity Commissioner myself as chair of Invest North Bay at the time. Mm-hmm. I went to the Integrity Commissioner and our own Integrity Commissioner, the one that the city has on retainer. Each municipality has to have an Integrity Commissioner on retainer. And I asked them if to give me his opinion on whether this ruling was correct. And unfortunately, we did have to spend taxpayer money to do it. But I also had a board that was, I felt these individuals were being treated very harshly in especially social media. Because the one thing they didn't want is what had happened. It's all public undue pressure on them and their families. The Integrity Commissioner ruled it was not. There was an error. It was not a local board. Again, then the individual that filed the initial complaint didn't let that stand. There is another process called the closed meeting investigator that you can also go to and ask. Mm-hmm. And that individual, the private individual, did that. And again, the closed meeting, no, it's not a local board. So by that time, unfortunately, there'd been a significant amount of money spent. But that's why there's a line item in the budget for Integrity Commissioner.
Perhaps you might know this, Dave, but during my council term, we established Invest North Bay, and the city of North Bay's council established Invest North Bay. They wanted to be able to act like they weren't an ABC, but maybe there's a legal term that I don't know. But in my opinion, they're still an ABC. They're an entity created by the city of North Bay and the councillors of North Bay. They're an entity that appoints city councillors to the board. What's the definition for a board that's not an agency of the city?
I can't get into legal jargon, but the council of the day established it as not a local board. You voted for that.
Yep.
So, that's the way council established it. Whether anybody agrees with it or not, that's the reality that you're dealing with as a new councillor coming in 2018.
I did vote to establish it, but I don't recall voting for it to not be an agency of the city. I don't recall that part. I'd have to look back in time.
Well, maybe you should reread the report because the information was there. I mean, when I spoke to some of the board members on Invest North Bay, they were adamant. Like, we went at great pains to establish it as a private board. Whether anybody agrees with it or not, they sought a lot of legal opinion to establish it the way it was established, and that's the way council approved it. Whether we agree with it or not, that's the way it was approved. That's the way it was set up. That's the way you have to govern yourself.
For the record, I believe I was writing columns for the Nugget at the time, and I said this was going to end badly. And I said they shouldn't do it because they're spending public money and they're appointing elected officials to it. There was no way that it should have been separate. And I believe, as the full circle comes, it happened exactly how I feared.
I believed as we were passing it, like I believe for sure the members of Invest North Bay did not want it to be an agency of the city.
I'm sure they did.
And they
of course,
didn't.
because then they can talk in private.
I don't recall actually passing it with that caveat being in there that they are not a board of a city, because they requested money from the city. They want city money, but they were not a board of the city. Come on.
There was a staff report, and all the information was in that staff report. So again, whether it was meant to be or not meant to be, that was the way it was. And in 2018, in December of 2018, when I went to my first Invest North Bay meeting, it was very evident that's what it was, and that's what the previous council had established. And it was also evident that some of the comments that you were making as time progressed were actually true as well. I mean, there was issues with Invest North Bay, and from the day I got on that board, I did what I could. I'm only one, but I did what I could, and so did a lot of other people around that table, to bring it back to something that was workable, but that didn't happen.
And just to add to Invest North Bay, like the reason why they were looking for that, it's a fine legal line to be or not to be an agency of the city, but the reason why they're looking for that is because they want to be able, or the organization, from what I understand, wants to be able to operate outside of the municipal act. And in order to have a competitive advantage in attracting industry and business to the city. Am I wrong in saying that?
Yeah, there's strategic reasons for you want to do that.
Of course, yeah.
And the strategic reasons make some sense. Especially if you're going after business. If no different than our own economic development department that's going after business. I mean, they sign confidentiality agreements with any a company or whatever they engage, that they speak to no one about it. And Invest North Bay was going to operate in the same manner. So yes, there had to be a certain amount of that. But in this day and age, today, if you were trying to establish a board like that today, you probably, I don't know if you could, quite frankly. But this was in 2017 or whenever it was, and it might not seem like that long ago, but a lot of things have changed since then.
Provincial level right now, transparency is obviously the cure for a lot of these things. Every time you end up entering the public arena with opinion and commentary, next thing you know, you're running for something. So what are your political aspirations going forward, Sheldon?
It's a good question. I don't know, to be honest. Every time I run in an election, there's a new allegation laid against me. So I'm sure the next election there'll be another allegation I got to deal with. That's how it feels anyways for me. Right now, I don't have political aspirations. I just more so want to do the right thing.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks for joining us today. Small Town Times. We are here to talk about issues as openly as possible and hopefully in a balanced way, to cover the different aspects of issues and to give people a chance to explore the nuances around what's going on. So hopefully we did a decent job about that. We were respectful of the people we were talking about as much as possible. But also had an opportunity to give our opinion, which you should be able to do as well. I think that's the most important thing, is that when given your opinion, try to do it in a way that's constructive, at least that it moves an issue forward rather than tearing other people down as much as possible. There's a way to do things and still get things done, right? So,
absolutely.
Hear, hear.
Yep.
Thank you guys for coming in.
Well,
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Right on.
Yeah.